Hello, this is Ted McFall from McFall Bee Yard. Today I wanted to show you a swarm trap. Uh, we have a pretty big trapping operation. This is a swarm trap. There's a few tips on how to try to get swarms to come into your swarm traps that I wanted to talk to you about today to try to make you be successful while you're trying to capture swarms. So one of the secrets is where to place it. Right now we're here along a tree line. The bees like to fly along tree lines, and they use different things as orientations. And so they'll use a tree line. They will also use fence lines and things like that. So it's good to put it along something that the bees might use to orientate themselves, including if there's a field with like a singular tree in it, put it right there with that singular tree, because the bees probably use that for orientation purposes. Catching swarms is kind of like fishing. You're not guaranteed to get one, but if you try to do everything right, your chances go way up that you're going to be successful. Another thing is the height. This is a good height. The thing is, you really don't want to be using a ladder. You know, around 9 feet or so high is like an ideal height. This is a little bit lower than that, but it's a lot better to be able to reach up there and get the bees. There's not going to be that much of a difference as far as the height, but you want to try to get it as high as possible without having to use a ladder, because you're just inviting trouble and accidents and things like that. Whenever you have a big box of live bees that you're trying to get down from a ladder, you're asking for trouble. And so another couple tips is the hole size. You want the hole towards the bottom. This one is a couple inches wide. You need about an 1.5 to 2 inches wide. And you see the two nails that have been driven in here. Basically, they were just nailed in at an angle and then hammered back to make a nice little cross there. And that's basically to keep birds and squirrels and flying squirrels and other things like that from going inside. Another thing to remember whenever it's up here is you want it leaning forward a little bit to help encourage the rain from not going in the entrance, because you don't want a bunch of water in there. So you can tip it forward, which is good, but you don't want it tipped left or right, because if you have it tipped left or right and the swarm moves in and they start laying wax, they're going to lay it at a funky, wonky angle, because the bees will follow gravity. So you want to make sure that it's not wonky that way. And another tip is remember where you put your swarm traps. A lot of beekeepers, not naming any names, but there are plenty of beekeepers who forget where they place their swarm traps. So try to either write it down or log it into GPS or something like that to try to keep in mind where exactly it is. One more thing I'd like to mention too is try to get these up early. You always have foragers and scouts and out doing stuff early in the season, so try to put these out before the swarming starts. The earlier the better. And this one happens to have a tag on it, or a business card, just in case it gets lost, or it winds up stolen, or if someone has a problem with it, or who knows what. There's a reference on it that someone can call a phone number on it, which is always helpful too. This is marked number 8 because you know, this is a pretty big bee operation. There, you know, I don't know how many are out here, but there's a lot of these swarm boxes at all these different out yards. One more thing I'd like to mention before I take it down and show you the insides is there's 4 little holes drilled on each corner, and that's for drainage purposes. Real simple, just tiny little holes in case water happens to get in there. And it's and they're nailed in a nail on the tree. Let me go and get it down here for you. And so you can just reuse this every year. You just leave the nail up there, and every year when it's swarm season, you just come, hang it on the big heavy duty nail, and you're good to go. And you just create this you bolt this hanging board to it just to make it easy to hang it on there. So I'm going to show you the inside here, and there's actually no need to take off all 4 screws. The lid is screwed down with 4 screws, and you can just take out 3 of the 4 and just pivot it on that last one. And this last one, I'm just going to loosen it a little bit just so we can pivot it. So there's the frames inside. So you have different options as far as what you want to put in it. A lot of people recommend putting starter strips. These don't have starter strips. These have the entire foundation in it. Sometimes bees prefer to see it like as more space available in it with just the starting strips, but these work just fine too. But a big key is going to be using an old wax. So you see like this old nasty drawn out wax. Well, bees are attracted to that. Bees come in and they see it and smell it, and it smells like home, and so they like that. So whenever you get like old nasty wax that you're like, well, you know what, I'm going to toss this out because I've already been using it for too many years and it's nasty, there's no need to throw it out. Use it in your swarm traps because they like that. This one, of course, is a 8 frame. You know, if you count these, this is the size of 8 frame. This is actually a very good size for a swarm trap. You can use 8 frame, you can use 10 frame. That's kind of like around the size that the bees prefer. If you try to go smaller, like try to use like a 5 frame nuke, that's not the best because a lot of bees see that as too small. Africanized bees like the small ones. They will be happy to move into a small 5 frame nuke, but unless you live in the southern tip of the United States and you have a lot of Africanized bees that you're trying to capture, the nuke size is not the ideal size. So yeah, there's a swarm trap. It's also a good idea to, if you catch a swarm in here, leave them in there for a while, and they'll end up putting propolis all around the inside of the hive and make the whole thing smell better. And another tip is you can use old wood and stuff for this. Bees actually prefer the older, more mature wood than like brand new lumber or a brand new hive. So that's one good thing that you can do with your old with your old equipment is turn it into swarm traps. Another important point to remember is to use something like Swarm Commander. If you don't want to buy Swarm Commander, you can use lemongrass. But all you do is spray it about 3 times on the inner lid, or you can just spray it over the top bar if you want. But I like to spray it on the bottom side of this of the lid. I'll spray it like 3 times, and then a couple times around the entrance or a bottom board. So where's the hole in the front? I'll spray it a couple times there, just so the scout bees will find it, and that works great. If you don't want to invest in these, because these are a little pricey. The Swarm Commander is awfully pricey. I like it a lot myself, but if you don't want to spend money on that, lemongrass is probably almost just as good. With lemongrass oil, you can put about 8 drops on a napkin, put it in a Ziploc, and close the Ziploc almost all the way. Just leave the corner of it open, and just throw it here on the top bar and close it up. And the smell will slowly go out of the Ziploc and attract bees. So Swarm Commander is a very important thing to. And every couple weeks or so, you need to come back and give it another couple of sprays of this stuff to help keep the scent in there through the swarm season. So this is a pretty much ideal setup here for swarm traps. A lot of the bees in this area are caught with these numerous swarm traps. One thing I wanted to mention was a lot of people think for some reason that they're going to make their hives swarm. So they're afraid, oh, if I put up a swarm trap near my apiary, I'm afraid my bees are going to think that's a good place and they're going to leave. But you have to keep in mind that bees swarm because of what's going on inside the hive. They don't do it because they think they found a nice new home. The only reason they'll swarm is if they're unhappy with something inside the hive. So this will not encourage your bees to swarm. Good luck with your swarm catching. Ted McFall from McFall Bee Yard.